We need to find him, we need to apprehend him, we need to bring him to justice as quickly as possible.
Instead, with A.C. Cowlings at the wheel, Simpson had visited Nicole's grave, while another family friend and lawyer, Robert Kardashian, read a note that Simpson had left behind.
I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I loved her and always will. I can't go on. No matter what the outcome, people will look and point. I can't take that.
As the drama unfolded on live television, thousands came out onto the streets to watch the most wanted man in America go by. As the Bronco headed back to his house on Rockingham, Simpson held a gun to his head. A SWAT team was called and given their orders.
Use your own discretion. You take him down if you have to.
Running after the Bronco was 24-year-old Jason, Simpson's son by his first marriage. Shortly after the police dragged Jason away from his father, Simpson gave himself up. In his own words, a depressed, lost man. In the months that followed, the police continued to build their case. They believed that Simpson had driven over to Bundy and had either stalked Nicole or been driven by Goldman's arrival into a fit of jealous rage. The detectives believed that he had then brutally murdered them both before driving back to his home, spreading blood in his Bronco as he went. The Bronco was a key crime scene in its own right. Rod Englert examined the vehicle when it was taken apart.
When the detectives approached the white Bronco that was parked outside of the Rockingham Street address, there was a transfer of blood pattern on the Bronco door that was consistent with the bleeding left hand of O.J. Simpson. It's less than a half-inch wide, a little over a quarter-inch wide. Consistent with when he reaches up and touches that to open the door. And that pattern is also consistent with the pattern on the inside of the door well where you open the door to get out.
The forensic team found Simpson's blood by the driver's door, on the driver's side carpet, on the seats, the instrument panel, and on the steering wheel. But it was the discovery of Nicole Brown's and Ron Goldman's blood, particularly on the center console, that clinched it. For Englert and the team, it appeared to prove that Simpson had been involved in the crime.
If there is any doubt in anybody's mind about this person not committing this crime, I mean, then they have a real problem with reality. I need something to point in another direction. I need something substantive that says someone else did or could have done this crime. None of that exists. Absolutely none of that.
For the police, a mountain of evidence showed that Simpson was the murderer. But is their case really so conclusive? Not only is there significant evidence pointing away from Simpson, but it's also now clear from the new research for this film that there is evidence that the police dismissed or ignored. One private detective has followed it up, and what he has discovered puts the crime in a completely new light. Dallas, Texas. Over the last 40 years, Private Eye Bill Deere has solved a number of major cases and has a reputation for taking nothing for granted. Right from the start, he had major reservations about the police handling of the case, and so began his own investigation.
They saw the bloody glove behind the bungalow at OJ's, and they put two and two together. And with a little bit of blood found on the Bronco and a little bit of blood that was found on the driveway, I think they made up their mind very quickly that it was OJ. And from that point on, they went no further. They had their man. I felt that in my mind, maybe, just maybe, there's something wrong here. Maybe we're not being told the story.
Bill talked the case over with colleague Chris Stewart.
I can't believe that a guilty man is going to voluntarily go down in the police car,
followed by Harold Weitzman, his lawyer, and say to the lawyer, "Lawyer, I don't need you. Just go ahead and sit outside. Go have a cup of coffee. I'll talk to him if I just killed 2 people." Why would somebody like O.J. allow himself to be cross-examined, asked questions, photographed, fingerprinted, everything that they did to him if he was guilty? The case is too comfortable. That's the problem I've got with it. It's too pat. And I told Chris, I said, you know, I've got to know the truth.
Bill Deere then went out to Los Angeles to examine the crime scene for himself.
This is where her black Jeep was found.
The back gate's been changed, the number's been changed, but other than that, this is the way it was when I arrived about 3 weeks after the murders.
And that night I came back, posted Chris across the street in the car to watch out and watch for my back, and hiked myself up over the fence. I came down the steps, walked the narrow passageway, up steps, down steps, and there I'm standing there by her door. And I'm looking now, and I still see some blood there. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at what I've been told by the press, that he was hiding behind the bushes. And I'm saying, he can't be hiding behind the bushes. There's a brick wall there separating one neighbor to the other.
There had to be a lot of commotion and a lot of screaming because these people were fighting for their life. Ron Goldman was a young man fighting for his life. Nicole was young, didn't want to die. Upstairs, you had 2 minor children. I think that's one of the things that really bothered me all along. I'm a father. I'm a single parent. I could no more picture myself coming here, killing either my ex-wife or whatever, and leaving my 2 minor children to walk out and see the mother, Nicole, lying there with her head nearly decapitated, and Ron Goldman laying against the fence, bleeding all over the place with his eyes wide open. Nobody, as a parent, could do that.
Another thing that was funny, and the people that we talked to, they all said to me, "Did you know that O.J., it bothers him, the sight of blood?" A weapon such as a knife is a weapon of choice. O.J. could have done anything other than used a knife if he was afraid of blood. If you're going to use a knife, you're going to be cutting somebody. You're certainly going to see blood. They arrested O.J. right after he came back from the trip. To me, when they examined him, there should have been some bruises on him that were indicative of a fight.
To Bill Deere, it was impossible for the killer to have come out of such a fight with nothing but a cut on his hand. And what's more, Ron Goldman was no average opponent. He was trained in karate.
I think that's the one thing that really caught me off guard. How do you fight with Ron Goldman, a karate expert to some degree, who's got 20-some-odd stab wounds, who's fighting for his life? He's got bruised knuckles. There's marks on the bottom of Goldman's tennis shoes. There's a mark across the canvas top of it where he's trying to kick out, trying to defend himself in the karate motions in the defensive posture that he's been taught.
Charles, you've had a chance to look at the crime scene pictures as much as we could really give you.
Medic and trained karate expert Charles England has studied the Goldman fight. Bill wants Charles to show him how he thinks the fight occurred.
Come on in, Jason. I'm going to demonstrate what's happening in the fight scene. Ron Goldman comes by here. He's surprised by a strike. He's blocking. He's coming in. The assailant's right here. He's defending himself. He's striking. The assailant's coming down, trying to overbear him. He's coming in. I'm stabbing. He leans back to the side kick. Boom. He gets struck. He comes back in. 1, 2. He's struck in. And 3.
Would there be any wounds or any marks on your body based on what Goldman has just done to defend himself and protect his life? If there were bruised marks on the knuckles, what would that be indicative of to you as a professional?
He struck him. He struck him multiple times.
Stick your hands up to strike him.
I would say there would be strike wounds in here and to the facial area. Reading the autopsy report, he had bruises around these 2 knuckles and somewhat the third, meaning he sunk his fist into the man.
Could I have done this fight without any bruises whatsoever on my body? What would be the least I could walk away from?
The least you could walk away from would maybe be a black eye, some bruised ribs, maybe even broken ribs.
But when Simpson was examined shortly after the murders, no injuries or bruises were found. except for 3 small cuts on his left hand. Simpson has given various answers about the cuts, from a broken glass in his hotel room in Chicago to wrestling with his son. Forensic pathologist Dr. Werner Spitz viewed the photographs and testified in court against Simpson.
These were not glass cuts. And what they were fingernail marks. How did they happen? He held her with his arm around her neck, she with her long acrylic fingernails tried to get his arm off, inflicting those wounds, which by location on the fingers corresponded to that kind of a grasp.
But even if they were fingernail marks, Goldman or Nicole couldn't have caused them. Goldman's nails were too short. And though analysis of Nicole's acrylic nails did show blood, it wasn't Simpson's. It pointed to someone else with a different blood group type B. So Simpson wasn't bruised as expected, and the fingernail evidence pointed away from him. There were more contradictions too. The police and the prosecution were adamant that Simpson had carried out the murder in a spontaneous fit of jealous rage. And yet they also believed that Simpson wore the gloves that had been found, suggesting a premeditated attack. But even this wasn't the most disturbing aspect of the police case. There were serious questions about the reliability of the evidence against Simpson at the crime scenes. One of the world's most respected forensic analysts is Dr. Henry Lee. Acting for the defense, he examined the scenes at first hand.
There are certain principles, crime scene principle, basic procedure violated. Everybody